Anna.
I'm Britt. Sorry, my voice went. Britt.
And we're from Visual Editions. We have been around for about 9 years now. We started as a more traditional book publisher, making very untraditional books. You might remember Tree of Codes, which is a book literally full of holes that helped launch us a little while back. This is our studio space, tucked under the Westway.
As Alex said, we kind of talk about ourselves as being a creative studio, publisher, and reading lab. The reason is that we found the idea of being a publisher really limiting. So we called a publisher for about 7 years, and then thought, frankly, fuck it, we don't want to be a publisher anymore. We still are. We still publish books. In fact, we've got to show you a book tonight that we launched today. So we still are. But we also do an awful lot of stuff with partners where we just try and create stuff that lives behind in this cross-section between design, between publishing, between tech, between culture, which we think is a really exciting place, but lots of stuff happens that we hope create magic for our audiences.
So today also happens to be a day where we just launched a new book called Breathe, and it's part of a wider platform called Editions at Play. So we thought we'd tell you a little bit about this first. And then we'll get into some of the kind of behind the scenes of the making of this book. So Editions at Play it's a space, it's a project, it's an idea that started a couple years ago with T. Uglo from Google Creative Lab in Sydney. And it, we had this amazing conversation. A lot of our conversations start with, wouldn't it be cool if, or what if you could make a space where you just explore and play with what's possible in the world of digital books? Because at the time, it felt like there were PDFs on the one hand that were kind of translated into digital books, and then there was the Kindle, which does its thing, but isn't delightful or magical or special. So we thought, how can we bring some of that delight and magic into the world of digital books? So that was the literally, wouldn't it be cool if, starting point conversation. And what's been born out of that is this fantastic project, ongoing platform called Editions at Play. And we talk about it as bringing together a love of literature or a love of reading, very cool technology, because we're working with the guys at Google Creative Lab who definitely have cool technology at their fingertips, and new reading experiences, because for us it's really about making stuff that audiences are interested in. So it's not technology for the sake of technology, it's not experimenting for the sake of experimenting, it's really doing stuff that hopefully people enjoy and are surprised by and even maybe a little inspired by.
And one of the things that's quite different about it compared to other kind of book projects that we've been involved with in the past is, for Editions at Play, we involve the authors very, very early on. So you've got authors working with developers and designers and ourselves as part of the lab. And it's a very different way of working where quite often, as we hope to show you a bit, it's not a linear process and it's not smooth. It's a little bit annoying at times as well for everyone involved, and we end up pissing off lots of people in the process. But the idea is that we get a chance to explore stuff and try out new things. It's also really important to say that it's free.
Yeah. So all the books are available for free. So if you wanted to start getting a little distracted as we talk now, we're totally fine with you getting your phones out and checking out our latest book.
Yeah.
Maybe not yet. Maybe we'll tell you when is the right time to do that. Hold that thought. Before you do that, we just thought it would be interesting to talk through the journey of that these books have taken. So we're 7 books in to these Editions at Play books.
But two years in time.
Yeah, 7 books, 2 years.
Yeah.
And so the first phase, this is a whiteboard from a super high-tech workshop we had at Google, where we talked about what felt really important to us. And you know, this looks like it's been tossed off, but actually this is about 6 weeks worth of thinking.
Distilled to 3 points.
Yeah. And what came out of all these workshops and all this thinking was, oh my God, books are really important to how we want these digital books to feel and look and be experienced. So what does it mean for these to be bookish, which kind of feels like a lame starting point now that we think about it.
But at the time, it's really important.
It felt so important. So we kind of boiled that down or tried to unpack that, and we were like, okay, so for these new, cool, magical, awesome digital books to be bookish, they've got to be mobile first. A lot of that thinking was, which we still believe in, right?
Yeah.
This idea of like, a bit like a Penguin pocket book that you flip out of your pocket and you read anywhere. The idea of, you know, flipping your mobile phone out of your pocket and reading that anywhere and being transported into another space. We were so
obsessed.
Really obsessed. We're still a little obsessed about this.
With the books having pages. Right.
Yeah, and the idea behind, do you want to talk about the idea?
No.
You're clearly over your obsession. I'm not. So the idea behind the books having pages was, okay, so if it's a book, then it's got pages, which means it's not a film, which means it's not a video game, which means it kind of has a frame. So it was all this thinking around what gives these experiences a vessel, I guess, so like a border to the experience. We're less obsessed with that, but it's still there.
Still there. But the third point is really important, this whole, you know, dynamic qualities, and what does that mean? Essentially it means that the technology we use to create these books, our books are just websites, essentially, but they use everything that's already on your mobile phone, so nothing is reinvented. The only thing that's reinvented is maybe how we combine the technology that's there, how we use it. But it's not new technology, it's what anyone could use.
And importantly, it was all about, and this is the whole dynamic thing, it was all about, and it still is about, making books that can't be printed. So going back to Tree of Codes, we were really excited back then of like, okay, so you make a book that's totally die cut, you can't possibly recreate that experience in any digital form, and we wanted to invert that and be like, well, actually, what could you do that's digitally native that you can't then transfer into print? That was it, yeah. That's still important.
So in the first phase, we had books like books that went through, that told a story through Google Street View, or a book where the text was sort of unstable as the main character became unstable and he started falling apart. So that was kind of the first phase.
Yeah.
And the second phase we've just come out of is a phase where we're exploring, can you create digital stuff that's free and still make it keepable, something that people really want to keep? Can you make it a limited edition? Can you do that with anything digital that's free? So we explored that through 2 different ways. And one way was the one to the left, that's the blue side, called Welcome to Universe Explodes, a book originally written by T. Uglow, and it's basically a blockchain book. It's a book using technology of Bitcoin. We called it Culture Chain.
Yes, and we think it's the first book experiment to use blockchain. And we're also really proud of it being included as one of the top 10 Fast Company books from last year, so that was pretty cool.
But the idea is that you distribute through blockchain, but also you engage with it through blockchain, so you have to edit certain words in there, which means every single copy, every single version of the book is unique. So you don't have any ownership of a book that's the same as anyone else's. So it was just an experiment. It never went to the end of the blockchain. It essentially got really expensive for Google because of the whole blockchain bubble. So it got too expensive to keep distributing. It was kind of funny and unexpected. And the other thing we experimented with about keeping books keepable that's digital was this one called Seed by Janet Walsh, where we had a fantastic young illustrator on board that almost used some of the kind of like old-fashioned crafts of illustration and created hundreds of illustrations where you saw the book wilting as you were reading it on your mobile phone.
And we were... Yeah, that's fine. I'll leave that. Sorry. I've got this ticking clock. Okay, so if you're interested in seeing the book as we talk about it, grab your phones, and the URL is breathe-story.com. And we'll talk you through it. But it's kind of, we were just talking earlier about like, oh, it's so hard to really capture these books without experiencing them firsthand because of all the stuff we just talked about. You know, they're dynamic, they're magical, like stuff happens as you read it. And with this one in particular, each reading experience is actually unique. So have a play as we ramble through.
Yeah, but it's a ghost story. It's a ghost story featuring the character called Flo, who can talk to ghosts. And it's a book that is a totally personal experience, created in a partnership with ambient literature and with Google Creative Labs, obviously. And it changes depending on where you're reading it, where you are, whether you're in your room. We hope you're going to be in your bedroom, but you could be anywhere. What time of day it is, what the weather is like, what street you're on. So it's something that we think is quite an intimate reading experience. You go.
Well, one of the starting points for when we started talking to Kate Pullinger, who wrote the story, was she was like, you know, there's loads of geolocative stuff, projects that use our outside environments, that use like streets that we're on, that use the outside world to kind of as the starting point to investigate these projects. And she was like, wouldn't it be cool, actually, if you inverted that and make that an interior world? So the character is meant to be very much in her bedroom, inside, and you as the readers, except for you now, will be at home, obviously, experiencing this book in your own bedroom. So the idea is that it reflects the character's experience is reflected in the reader's experience, and that's an interior, inner kind of world thing. So we were really interested in exploring that, using all the tech that's typically used for outside environments.
And in amongst all that, the story is interrupted by different ghosts who've got different kind of ghostly behaviors, and is using all the tech of what mobile phones can do to kind of get in the way of the reading experience. We thought we'd show you a little bit about the inside, if you like, of Creative Labs in Sydney. It's such a fun relationship because they're 12 hours ahead of us all the time, so we're always behind, we're constantly behind, which can be really, really frustrating. But on the good hand is we're working on the books 24 hours a day. But also, everything is done on Google Hangouts. So we work with us in London, we got Kate in Bath, and in London, we got ambient literature in Bristol, then we got the developers and designers in Sydney. So it's one of those kind of really collaborative projects where you've got to make sure that every single person is involved at the right time and feel like joint ownership at the right time as well. And it can be really, really messy.
These are some of the, we just thought, we were kind of digging through some slides and thinking, okay, well, what would be interesting to share with you guys that normally or typically we wouldn't share. And this is one of the really early just visual mood boards. And we talk so much about the behavior that the book has and the reading experience, but there's also, of course, the whole visual language that needs to capture the spirit of the writing, but also the spirit of the reading experience. And that we need to get right from the outset. So there are a lot of kind of parallel things happening, and creating the right kind of visual feel for the book is really, really important. So these were some colors that we were looking at, but also mood and feel and typography as well. And you can see some of the influence of these things in the final book. This was another idea that we ditched.
We basically couldn't do it. The difficulty sometimes is because everything is done in parallels. We've got the author writing a book, Kate writing the book, we've got the developers testing out prototypes, we've got the designers coming up with ideas. Sometimes we've got ideas which sound great in theory, like this one, we wanted the book to be responsive to your color environment as a reader. So if your bedroom had a certain color, we wanted the book to reflect that compared to another reader in another kind of bedroom with another color scheme.
But where this went wrong, weirdly, is that most color palettes were really dull and brown. So when we did it like this, we were like, oh my God, that'd be amazing. But that's like, from Pinterest. It's not a real bedroom. Right? So that's why we ditched that one.
Yeah, it all got a bit beige. So what we learned instead was how can the camera work? What can we do with the technology of the phone to kind of try and make it personal? So this is just again example of what we were figuring out, what kind of views the camera can have, how the ghost could come into the screen, how we can see elements of the bedrooms that you as a reader would be in, or in this case, I think it must be Google's desk, right?
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah,
With a beer bottle.
late night. And then that's the final thing. So the final, if you like, look and feel of it is this, where we have an element we can see what the ambition was of the sort of pinkish color schemes and what we aspire to do, but in no way does it look like the sort of initial idea of let's make it all really driven from your bedroom and Pinterest into your phone. But the final thing is this, and so it's a very intimate bedtime story. It's a book we call The Book That Comes to You, because you feel quite haunted by it, both from the behavior of the book on the phone, using the technology of the phones and your environment, but also as a story, as a narrative of Flo being haunted by 5 different ghosts.
And we'll leave it there. We were kind of thinking it might be interesting if you guys fancy having a play with the book when you get home, and you want to take a screen grab of that initial first screen in your room, and you want to send that to us, and you're fine with us sharing that, then, that's cool. Thank you.
Thank you.